Welcome to the Hybrid Human Show, where we take you to the forefront of biomedical science and engineering. I'm Dr. Christina and I'm a biomedical engineer and neuroscientist at the University of Sydney. This show is separate to my roles at the university, yet it is part of my lifelong mission to make science and technology accessible for everyone.
I've collaborated with fungi to extract pigments, vivid pigments, blues, reds, yellows, orange. You put it directly on your skin, in your most sensitive areas, in your eyes, on your lips, all over your face. What do we know about that makeup? What do we know about the color in it? What do we know about the composition and how it impacts our skin? What if the colors that I extract from fungi could enhance the benefits of our makeup beyond aesthetics? How could a new system of pigments extracted from fungi change the beauty industry?
Hi, Jesse. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me. This is very exciting.
I am so excited to have you on. First of all, there's something I think we need to get right, and it is, how do you say fungi? Is it fungi or is it fungi?
Oh my gosh. So I switch between both all the time.
Me too.
The only one I don't say is fungi, which is like real left field for me. But like I could go between fungi and fungi in the same sentence. So unbothered.
Okay, me too. That's good to know. I feel like I'm more of a fungi, but then I have gone into the fungi at times.
Right? Depends on the day, depends on the crowd.
Yeah, exactly. I think doesn't it depend on like where in the world you're from? Is that a thing, or am I just imagining that?
It absolutely could. Honestly, no clue.
Yeah, me neither. But we are here because of your amazing work.
Thanks.
With mushrooms. I can't even remember how I came across your work, but I think it is because I love mushrooms. And because of my work with brain sensing and sort of building sensors for that, I came across, I think it was, there are some labs that are starting to make sensors with mycelium. Have you seen that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
well,
I think
not necessarily for brain sensors, but I've seen other types of sensor mycelium interactions. But like that's really cool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, yeah. Not to make brain sensors, because that would actually be really hard with hair and all that sort of stuff.
Fair
I feel.
point.
Yeah. But yeah, like I think for body sensors is what I saw. But then you are doing something completely left of field, putting them into our makeup. So how did all of this start? Like, how did it come about?
Totally. Okay. So, okay, we're going to go back in time. Let's go for a little bit. So starting in the early days of life, I always had a passion for creative arts, design, making is just kind of the word that I've been learning more and more that is used in the design world to creative output of ideas through making. Brilliant. Didn't know I could use that word before. So I'd always been drawn to being a maker. And at the same time, I was also drawn towards the sciences. And I felt that the reason I was like drawn to the sciences was because not only were they fascinating and challenging, but it was also a very concrete way of helping people in the planet. Like here was a real like method of like, here's how to do things and explore things. And it's all based on curiosity and testing and research and, just like exploration. So I had these two sides of me that I was really excited to explore. And academically, my surroundings very much encouraged me just based on the world I was in I was much more in a scientifically successful situation than one that was teaching me how to be a better maker. So it seemed like, ooh, I'm really good at science and I'm just going to make it home and I'm just going to have all of this be my passion. And as much as I loved like sewing and upcycling and all of these things, I would just like do that in my free time. And the science would be what I pursued academically. And I always had this joke with my family that someday I would be a doctor who retired from medicine to start designing shoes, because who wouldn't trust a doctor for footwear? You know, it's like, oh, well, they made it. Surely it works. Even if they're not a podiatrist, like, fine, there's got to be something here. So I started pursuing science, wanting to be in medicine, and then kind of had this like reconciliation with myself that, ooh, maybe that's not exactly how I want to be pursuing my passions at the same time, and wanted to find an outlet where I could be helping people through science at the same time as I could pursue that creative passion. And in a similar moment of while I was soul searching, a friend of mine came to me and was like, I just saw the craziest lecture. This is now in university. I just saw the craziest lecture. She was in the art school, and they had someone come from MA Material Futures, who was one of the first. Every year there's a couple like quote unquote famous graduates like from that year that you're just like, oh, that is iconic Material Futures. Yes, we see that. So this is one of those early famous projects. This was Suzanne Lee's BioCouture kombucha SCOBY jackets. And these are stunning. These are stunning.
Wow.
And like just the designs of them, 10 out of 10. So this is like in the early days of no one even knew what kombucha was or SCOBY, and Suzanne Lee now doing fabulous things at Biofabricate, which I'm very excited to be full circle moment exhibiting at. Yeah, so she's the founder.
Together.
So excited. So she runs Biofabricate as well as Modern Meadow. I don't know what her current connection is, but she's definitely a founding person of both of those. And now Biofabricate manifests as a summit. And this was actually a place where that was one of my first dive into the industry moments when I moved to London. And fast forward 4 years, now I'm exhibiting my own research at the summit come January, which I'm very excited about. But that's skipping ahead, but very excited. So Suzanne Lee, I made Material Futures. My friend's like, this is crazy. You would love this. I start looking into this. I'm like, you're totally right. I love this. She did this master's. I'm going to look into this master's. I start looking around. I see that really this is a leader in its space. No other courses at the time were doing similar things or had similar outcomes, and just like really incredible work coming forth consistently. So I said, okay, great. I'm going to go into the unknown, and I have no idea what's happening here, but I did all my pre-med requisites. If I ever decide that this isn't for me and I want to go back to try to be a doctor, sure, I've done it. So I decided to go towards biomaterials and biodesign, and ended up applying to and getting into the MA Material Futures course, moving to London, and that kind of started this whole journey of incorporating science into design for me.
Wow, that is incredible. It's actually incredible that you've come full circle and you hear so many of these stories where you're now like exhibiting with, your idol or the person that that first helped you or encouraged you to get like I was at this event the other week, and who did I bump into? I don't know if you've heard of Synchron. They're an Australian company making brain implants, basically. Whoa. And I bumped into one of the founders at this event, and I was like, oh my God, you're the reason that I became interested in brain-computer interfaces in the first place. So like I can totally resonate with that feeling. That is so cool.
Right? And it's just like, I know you're a real regular person, but like, oh my God.
Yeah, exactly. So was the fungi piece then, it kind of came out of seeing this other research?
Yeah. So I guess the master's itself was, okay. So the way that they describe the master's is the intersection of technology, design, and craft. I believe those are like just like the little titles, subtitle that they'll put on like an exhibition. And the goal of the course is it is entirely self-led, especially for the second year. So it's a 2-year master's. And in the first year, you'll have a few briefs, maybe a client project, depending on how COVID impacts your master's, because it directly impacts mine. So,
me too.
Right. So, like in a normal time, you may have a different experience, but the way it's designed is to break the way that you think right now and challenge you to explore new ways of thinking and to particularly ways of making. The course is very making heavy and very output heavy, and that is kind of the focus of like, yes, you're learning all these incredible we're learning all these incredible things. How do you manifest those into a realization? And what is that? How do you manifest that realization into a physical output?
How did you discover that you could extract pigment from fungi?
Right. So that was kind of in my final year of the master's. We're supposed to be spending the whole year working on our final thesis idea. And the master itself is 2 years, but I took a year out in between just because of COVID. And I wanted to spend some time really focusing on my studies when I was able to be in person. So in that year out, I was able to work full time. Rewinding a bit. The special part about the Biofabricate conference in my mind and in my heart is not only that I get to meet so many of my heroes, but I was also able to meet a hero of mine who then who is an expert in the space and is just absolutely incredible. Dr. Amanda Parks, who was self-titled as a fashion scientist. And when I first met her, I was like, oh my God, you're science and fashion. I want to be science and fashion. Let's hang out. And she was like, great. I'm actually in the early stages of starting the startup, and I need a science person who's interested in this work to be on the team. Like, can you do part-time right now? And I'm like, sure, yeah. I'm in the first year of master's. I don't know what's going on. I'll do anything. And that was the beginning of my time working at PANGAIA. So I had started being part-time, and then just coincidentally, COVID hit, and I was able to then take the year out of the master's, work full-time at PANGAIA in the R&D department. And in that time, I was able to see a lot in terms of material innovation of what was missing in the space. And one of the areas I identified, and realistically, both for the company and for the work I was doing, but also in the back of my mind, what were we missing that I could be creating in my master's in that final year? So I noticed that there was really a lack of renewable sources of color that had the same vibrant pop that we expect and depend on from synthetics and from minerals. And where could we be getting that from nature? So I kind of had that question in the back of my mind as I entered my final year of the master's and went back to part-time and full-time student, part-time working, full-time studenting, and which was fun but exhausting. And so I started looking for sources of color in nature, lots of incredible papers out there, really, really cool things, so much more than I ever knew was possible. And at a similar time, watched the movie Fantastic Fungi and was just absolutely mesmerized. And at the same time was like, oh, all those colors. I wonder, can I harness that? Can we do something with that? Or like, where can we see that happen in like our material world? And that kind of is the positioning of the masters to make you think in this certain direction, in this like expansive space, but also seeing what was in the innovation landscape and where could I really make an impact. So kind of all those pieces kind of fit together quite nicely.
Wow, that's insane, because I'm just thinking about like, so many things. So, because I suppose, was there prior work to go off of in terms of like extracting pigment? And then like my other thought is, where did you find these, the mushroom fungi? What's the other one? Is it lichen?
Yeah, lichens.
Lichens. Oh my God.
A lot of people say lichen too.
So yeast mold, I'm just reading off of your site. Okay, where do you find these things?
Ooh, very fun. So lots of places. So I guess the first bit being building off of the existing research. So within the context of the master's, it's very much based within a design school, art and design school. So there is not there. When I had first started was the first year that they had been opening up a bio lab, and this was a BSL-1, primarily bacteria type lab, not very open to fungi, that were at a BSL above 1. And that's what most of these are. And
so hang on a sec. Sorry to interrupt. What is it? BSL? VSL?
Biosafety level.
Okay, BSL. Yes.
Totally.
Go on.
And the thing about working with fungi and bacteria in the same lab is if you're not careful, one becomes a contaminant of the other, and it just becomes, in the opportunistic microbial world, if it can grow, it will. So so it does. So we had a lot of, not that it was my cause, but at a similar time, they were having a lot of contamination issues. It was not me, I will say, but so it was very difficult for me to grow something in that lab itself. And at the same time, I had very limited time. I had from coming up with the idea of like, oh my gosh, pigment from fungi, this is crazy, to ending the year, I had about 5 months.
No way.
Right. Which is no in biology.
No.
So we had to work with whatever we could get our hands on. And so in the context of fungal pigments, there is, I'd say, of the fungal kingdom, since it's a relatively new discipline to be studying, we know about 5% of the entire kingdom, which is insane.
That's insane.
That's nothing. So fine, so be it. 95% still a mystery. Of that 5%, we already have been able to identify hundreds that produce pigments.
No.
So, right, in that 5%, hundreds, right? And as it grows, so too will that discovery grow. Love that. Huge opportunity there. And that wealth of research of which organisms are producing pigments and what those pigments, because these pigments are secondary metabolites of the organisms, meaning that primary metabolites are used for the generation of energy and growth, if you will, and then the secondary metabolites for the environmental survival. So that is influenced by what is in their environment that they need protection from. So these metabolites will have inherent properties because I like to think of it as nature doesn't see beauty, nature only sees function. And it doesn't think like, ooh, this turquoise is so cute, let me just produce this. No, it is an antifungal agent that just so happens to be turquoise in like the sunlight, It like that's not, it's a coincidence in terms of our reality and our visual perception is that it's a beautiful color. Nature's just got an antifungal agent or an UV protection agent or something like that. Like those are just inherent to the organism to survive. Because like nature doesn't care what color it makes, right? Like even looking at other types of organisms that you see, like beautiful colors like butterflies, they're not trying to be cute. They're just trying to camouflage and survive, They're like, I'm not a leaf, but I look like one. Don't eat me.
Yeah, exactly. And it looks like you found a number of what look like really beautiful colors that we would actually use and wear.
My goal was really to identify colors that when you see them, it's hard to believe that they're natural. Because I find that kind of like, the word's escaping me. The the opposite of it, I don't know.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? The fact that it doesn't look like what it is.
I know. I'm trying to think of it.
Oh my God, what is that word?
I need to look this up. When something isn't what it looks like. Is this it? Is this what you mean?
Which word?
Illusion? No. Apparent? No. Illusion? No.
Like, it's not like a paradox, no.
Juxtaposition?
Ooh, something like that.
Sort of close, but not. Yeah.
Getting closer. Oh my gosh.
No, we need to find out what this is.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying. Okay, it's like paradox, but not. This is hilarious.
Where it's not contrast, but like
contradictory? No, it's not contradictory. Contrary? No, that's kind of too similar. Why are there so few words?
I just Googled the word for when something is different from what it looks like.
That's what I Googled as well. And I got nothing.
I got nothing. Oh well. Well,
we're gonna think of it in a second.
We sure will. I'm so excited for that to happen. But
and then that's just gonna be a beautiful moment.
Right. So be it. So anyway, very excited to find something that
no.
Like kind of, but no. It's like I wanted it to look as unnatural as possible so that it expands people's understanding of what could be from nature.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's a lot of, when people think of color, brown color palette, and that isn't, and maybe that's been what's happened from a lot of different plants in the past. That's really not inclusive of what the bounty that nature holds and like what we could really be working with here. And so to have something more expansive and more challenging that perception was really the goal here. So there is a whole spectrum of fantastic colors coming from different types of fungi. And it was a matter for the 5 months I had, it was a question of what can I get my hands on as quickly as freaking possible. And the beauty of having a background. Oh, right. So in university, I studied biomolecular science, which was primarily a pre-medical major for anyone who is pursuing medicine after graduation. Because in the US, you do it separately with your bachelor's as more generalist, and then you specialize in your further studies. So my bachelor's studies were very much organic chemistry, life sciences focused on the human body, never really talking about environmental so much, and definitely not talking about fungi. So fungi, whole new world of science to me. But at the same time, working in a eukaryotic space, it's all the same stuff, you know, like human bodies, I was studying eukaryotes, like that's equivalent. Okay, fine. And chemistry and organic chemistry to organic chemistry, fine. So as I'm researching these, I'm looking at what could I extract from the urban environment around me in central London, which is not much. And
no, not at all.
Not really. Like, so there, I really just doing what I could. And the extraction parts themselves, which is really where my chemistry background came in key, was enabling me to figure out a protocol that I could do in my backyard, because we only had a biology lab, we didn't have a chemistry lab. And as much as I'm grateful to the design school, for building a biolab, they didn't understand why and how a biolab wasn't suited for chemistry. Because that wasn't of their like understanding. They didn't understand that those are separate labs entirely. So fine. So I was like, great, can I borrow a stir plate and some stir bars and beakers and like a couple solvents and like I'll be outside. Don't worry. I used to teach chemistry labs. Like, trust me, I'm going to be fine. Just give me some time and space. And so I was able to do all these extractions in my garden.
What?
with
Okay.
space, and time and money and everything together. But I ended up being able to work with different organisms. Some were foraged here in London. Especially the lichens. There are a bunch of lichens that grew, a lot that grow in the urban London area. And the thing about working with lichens is they grow usually on trees or on stone, but lichens grow very slowly. And there is a really rich history of dyeing with lichens, particularly in Scotland. But
Wow.
the story is like super cool. It's like about this unbelievable magenta color that they used to get from all these lichens. And the kind of the moral of the story is the reason it's not around anymore is because they started foraging them to extinction. And they didn't understand what they were working with and didn't have that type of ecosystem mindset where they could try to understand how to do a non-extractive process and maintain the natural environment's health so that it could be useful for generation, all of that together. So lichens, it's very important when you're working with lichens to make sure that you're sourcing them ethically. And so ethical foraging of lichens includes picking up lichens that have fallen on the ground, not those that are still affixed to their tree or to their stone. So I would be crouched on the ground in front of a store in central London, like crab walking, picking up pieces of
That's a look.
It was such a look. And I had like a little bag next to me and was just like,
oh my God.
And then there were some bracket mushrooms that were on this tree stump outside of a hotel. The hotel clearly did not care that those were there, and if anything, didn't like them. So I'm like crouched on this tree bark, chiseling the mushrooms off outside of this hotel. Everyone's coming outside, like, what is this chick doing? Because like, I'm there with gloves. Like, I feel like as a scientist, you have a real appreciation for sometimes you have to be careful when you approach nature because you don't know what you're touching. And as much as nature is overall non-toxic, yet again, everything in limited quantities can be non-toxic.
Yeah, like how do you know if they're poisonous or not?
Totally. So I think the key thing to communicate in my work is that whether or not so one thing I nerdy girl parts of my life, as I feel like we can all relate to.
We love the nerdy.
We love the nerdy. So I grew up going to zoo camp where I would go to the zoo and learn about things at the zoo and the animals at the Detroit Zoo, which is a fabulous zoo. One of the things I learned about was the difference between poisonous and venomous and blah, blah, blah. In terms of poison, the key route of administration for toxicity is ingestion. So yes, there can be like irritants on the skin and things like that, but really a poison is ingested. And so this will be important for my work, particularly when I want to move into the food market, because color, as I'm positioning my company right now, color is to be used in all types of material applications. And I want to be able to bring a renewable, non-toxic, sustainable solution to all of those different sectors, including those which are ingested and those are which are on the skin, all of anything. So the thing about these is maybe when you're looking at let's say a mushroom that is considered to be toxic, usually the toxic element is some sort of metabolite or some sort of co-product of another metabolic process. And whether or not that toxic agent is inherent to the pigment itself is a really important thing to understand. So is it the pigment molecule that might be toxic, or is it the overall organism? Because as I'm doing these extractions, there is the extraction and the purification. So if the pigment molecule itself is non-toxic, including non-poisonous, all of the above, non-irritant, that's like home run gold medal. But at the same time, do not eat the organism.
But looking at the photos of this makeup, I also feel I want to eat it. Like, is it
Thank
edible?
You. Oh my gosh, I almost dropped my water.
Does it expire?
So that's the fun bit right now. I have genuinely no idea.
Okay.
It's like early stages. I didn't even, by the time in those 5 months, so I was both foraging organisms I could, and I also partnered with a research lab in the US who grew some of the more exciting colors as a part of their research lab in wood science. And they grew them as kind of a hobbyist interest in how could they use those colors to color wood. So they have a cooperative, and I was able to partner with them to get grown plates sent to me in the UK where I could extract from those dehydrated Petri dishes. And 4 months, 5 months, there is simply no time for testing. And God love them, my university had no capacity for that. Like, if they didn't have a chemistry lab, they did not have an analytical chemistry lab, let me tell you. So one of the things that I'm very excited about doing right now in my position of starting a business is to get this testing successfully underway and like foolproof so that it is ready to be set forward for FDA approval and all of the necessary regulatory approvals that we need in order to sell them as cosmetics. Because I personally do not advocate putting anything on your body, in or on your body, that you don't know what it is and you don't know how it's going to interact. Because I'm like very excited about these, but I'm also personally not wearing them yet. I believe in them. I believe in their non-toxic identity. I believe that they're non-toxic. I believe that they're not only beautiful and have those colors, but also have cosmeceutical properties. Many of these are anti-inflammatory, UV protected. Some of them are even being found to be anti-cancer, anti-tumor. These pigments are cool. These pigments are so cool. And at the same time, I'm not about to put anything on my skin or anyone else's skin that I'm not 100% sure is safe for them and has no adverse effects. Like, that is just, because to me, one of the exciting yet daunting parts about working in the fungal space is that if I get it wrong, I kind of ruin the reputation for all those who will come after me, because people already are so apprehensive about fungi, especially, oh, this color is produced by a mold. Mold is like immediately in people's brains are like, oh my God, throw it out, get rid of it. Like, we need an antifungal stat, all of the above. It's already working against that stigma. So to be uber careful is like really in the forefront of my mind, so that we make sure that this is done absolutely correctly and not ruin it for what's to come. And I mean, for myself, of course, but like really, there's going to be a whole wave of fungal technologies. As that 95% gets discovered, surely we've got good stuff going on. So, don't want to ruin it for the rest of the world and for the rest of the fungal material space.
Yeah, that's a huge responsibility. I feel like it's not just your responsibility, but yeah, it's a huge experiment, I guess, because if you do get it right, and if we do start using these things, we can really replace a lot of the synthetic chemicals that that we don't love, that are all around. But also, I guess we have to also continue to be conscious of the, as you said, ethical gathering of these sort of natural naturally sourced pigments.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You're a mycological alchemist, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's so funny. When I think of that word, alchemist, the first thing that always comes to my mind is this book called The Alchemist by, is it
Of course.
Pablo Coelho? Do you know that book?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I love that book. And I feel like alchemy has, like, it's always used in the media, like the alchemy of love and the alchemy of the brain. And it's kind of like this romanticized idea that people have, but you're like a real alchemist.
Totally. I like especially felt peak alchemist when I was like in my kitchen, in my garden, doing my little experiments. And like I felt like this is like proper alchemy, you know, when they're like in the Middle Ages, like, ooh, let's make gold, put a little dash of this, a little tube of this, let's see how it works. And that's exactly how I felt in my garden.
Yeah, like it's so cool that you were able, so that that the uni let you take this stuff home and then bring it back into the lab. I feel like that I've never heard of this.
Equipment came back into the lab, but the materials did not.
Okay. So you did a lot of this in your home.
I almost exclusively.
Okay. And so have you mentioned your company, is that what you're going to focus on, working with this sort of these sorts of materials?
Yeah, so I'm very excited to finally be starting this research into an actual startup. And so I've now registered my company, Pitri Limited, in the UK.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Very excited now learning how to be a startup founder, which is a whole other layer of education that I haven't done yet, which is very fun. But trying to position Pitri as a renewable colorant supplier for all types of materials, but initially going to focus on beauty applications, and definitely interested in getting towards textiles, getting to food. I've already done a couple of proof of concepts for creative materials like paints and 3D printing filaments. So really excited about all these different ways that fungal pigments can work in materials that we need them to. But at the same time, in doing the beauty for my thesis exhibition, it generated a lot of excitement, which helped me realize that in the beauty space, there's a lot of conversation on clean beauty and vegan beauty. And rarely does that include the color component, which is fascinating because the whole point of buying certain products, particularly in beauty, is the color. So they're making these commentaries on all of the other ingredients except for the reason you bought that product. What?
Yeah, exactly. I 100% agree. And there's so much out there in this in the space of clean beauty, and I feel like most of us don't even know what that even means at so many levels, you know, where the ingredients come from, were they sustainably you know,
Right.
procured, like all this sort of stuff. And it's so hard to know sometimes.
Right. And it really puts a lot of pressure on the consumer because, like, I'm just out here trying to buy a lipstick.
Yeah,
Like, I'm just trying to
exactly.
be cute. Like, how am I supposed to have all of the weight of like my purchase be on me? Like, that's really tough. But at the same time, each definition of clean or sustainable is differs per brand, it makes it even harder. And like one of the craziest things to me, which is my personal opinion and just my viewpoint, is as the pressure from consumers to offer more vegan beauty options really hit the cosmetic industry, they had to look for a solution to well, let me explain this differently. One of the most important red color in history is from cochineal, which is an insect. It's an animal, and it grows on the petals of cacti. It's a specific cactus. Maybe it's a Nopales cactus, maybe.
Okay.
And it grows on the petals, and they look like little white furry blobs. And cochineal insects produce carminic acid, and this carminic acid has the most beautiful, beautiful red. And this is where, like, going back, I don't know how many of hundreds of years of trading and ancient dyes, and that is so outside of my realm. History is not my strong suit, but like there is rich history over there. More importantly, carmine is the name of the color. Carmine has historically been the most important color for lipstick.
Wow.
And it is food safe. It is light fast, meaning it doesn't fade with the light. It is the color of red velvet cake. That is what that is. That is carmine. And that's where all of that comes from. So it is food safe. It is non-toxic. It has the performance properties we need it to. All of these together made it the leader in its industry. And it was a renewable material. It's grown by nature. And all of these together, we love it. We love it. The pressure to have vegan ingredients made these companies stop using carmine in favor of synthetics, because the synthetics, even though they were derived from fossil fuels and potentially had more toxic impacts that we didn't realize in the moment, were vegan. And so there is that interplay between where vegan materials have important impact and where it is can lead to misguided decisions that aren't necessarily putting human health or environmental health at the forefront, which is frustrating. So all of the beauty industries have begun to pivot their interest towards synthetic reds instead of trying to find like a natural of course they're trying to find a natural alternative to carmine, but like they're stuck. They can't find anything, so they're using synthetics. And like, to me, that's so frustrating, because like I would so much rather have the nature born color. But like that's my personal opinion. Like I get it, I don't have to, but
yeah, I mean, it must be hard for them to achieve that balance, not only in terms of synthetics versus vegan and all that sort of stuff, but also just the cost of producing their products.
totally.
Speaking of color, I feel like there's a lot of alliteration going on here. We've got color, we've got cacti, we've got carmine. We've got, I was going to bring up another C word, condoms.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like that's a weird word, condoms. So you also use color in condoms. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So that was for a project for the Biodesign Challenge, which was a course that I took in my final semester in my bachelor's. And this was really my first ever design type class, which was very fun. As a science student, it was very difficult to get into any sort of art and design courses because, rightly so, those are prioritized for art and design students. That makes sense. So as the universe would have it, in my final semester, after I'd come to this, oh my gosh, I want to pursue biomaterial, biodesign, da-da-da. It just so happened to be that my university was offering for the first time ever a course to go to the Biodesign Challenge. And they were offering it through the art school. And at the time, they weren't going to let me in. And it was going to be exclusively for art students. And I fought them so hard. I was like, you are so wrong. If you're going to try to offer a bio design course and not let a bio student in, absolutely not. So I won.
Sometimes unions are a bit confused, right?
Right? I was like, I understand why you think you might be right, but you're wrong. So you got to fight for it. But basically, the Biodesign Challenge is an incredible competition. I believe it's for high school students as well now. And so it's for university and high school students across the world to participate in, I think it happens every July or August. And it's a yearly summit where students competing from all of these different schools come together to present their projects of whatever sector of biodesign they want to be working towards. And shout out to the biodesign book behind you. So
yeah, can you see it? Oh wait, where is it? There it is.
Which was so he was one of the judges at the time that I was there.
No way.
And that was such a fangirl moment. I was like, oh, I know who you are. Like, we love your book. So, actually, Suzanne Lee's Bio Couture might be in that book as well.
Oh, really? Okay.
But
yeah, okay.
So the Biodesign Challenge happens every year. Really wonderful organization, really cool stuff. So in the Biodesign Challenge course, this is where the schools start their ideas. And this was really my first introduction to different types of design thinking, how to incorporate scientific ideas into design realizations and problem-solving generation. In this context, I was really looking for a way that, and we also only had a semester to do this.
Yeah,
and,
of course.
Right, of course. And in that semester, the first half was learning, the second half was doing. So we had about 2 months, right? And really short time span to figure out something that would help people through science, and something that I was always excited about, which this is a moment where I'm now realizing that connection between the color that I was working with then and now my life now, that I've always been kind of interested in visual color changing materials, especially like color indicators in chemistry, or like I've always found those fascinating because that is just a stunning visualization of chemical change, which I really love. And I knew that I wanted to be working with color. I knew that I wanted to be working with some sort of stigmatized space on college campuses. And I knew that I also wanted to be working with some sort of waste resource, which is kind of 3 really big things to draw together. But
we love it.
We love it. Why not reach for the stars? So the idea was gnosis is what ended up coming from it.
Okay, that's how you say it. I was wondering.
Totally. So gnosis comes from, or at least for me, the reason the name makes sense to me was gnosis from gnosi seoton, which is what I believe is written on the temple at the Oracle of Delphi. And that was the phrase, know thyself. So gnosis as know of knowledge and all of these things. So gnosis as a condom company was a not a diagnostic, but a visualization tool to help someone know or have an indication of, ooh, something funky in terms of your sexual health is going on here. You should get tested. And this was born out of conversations I had with peers on campus, where there was a stigma either within their community, within their healthcare system, within their friend groups, whatever it may be, that prevented them or either inhibited or like just made it really hard for them to motivate themselves to get tested for different STIs. And that is a really crucial thing. STIs have such important impact on our health. And it is so, so important that people get tested and that this becomes a destigmatized space, because that is just human health. Like sexual health is human health, and like y'all gotta be okay with getting tested. Like that is just no more stigma. I'm over it. So what I was trying to do with gnosis was challenge the stigma of sexual health and sexual testing, or STI testing, through a visual color change indicator. And that visual color change indicator happened to be, because what could I get my hands on, happened to be red cabbage. Because red cabbage very famously has a gorgeous color change indication between its acid and basic spectrum, from a really, really deep blue purple to like a bright red and like stunning. So that very different visual indicator could show or detect changes on the surface pH of an area of the skin. So if there was a sore or a lesion, that would have a different pH than the rest of the skin and would show that visual indication of, ooh, something's going on here. It's not just a little pimple. It's not just a little irritation from shaving or something. Like, something's going on here. And the reality is I've tried to say, if you're reaching for this anyway, go get tested. Like, no matter what it says, if you're reaching for this, go get tested. If you're worried, do it. But like, the idea was to just kind of like start that conversation. And then the cabbage itself would be from waste that couldn't be sold at supermarkets because whether it was moldy or not pretty enough to be sold in supermarkets, because there's a huge issue of lots of very good produce that's too ugly to be sold, right? You know, and it's like perfectly good. So working with all of that resource of red cabbage that is absolutely fine to be used, and maybe if it's past food safety window, it could still be used as a great color change indicator to be worked into a water-based lubricant that would be incorporated into these condoms to be used as a sexual health encouragement for testing.
Wow, so that's how it works. So you work the cabbage into condoms. I mean, what better tagline could you ask for?
Right? Cabbage into color changing condoms. CCCCC.
Yeah. Have any of the big sort of like, I don't even know what the who are the big kind of companies that produce condoms? I don't know what they are over there. I think
like
here
Trojan
it's like
and
Durex or something. Yeah. Have any of them approached you to kind of commercialize this or anything?
No one's really. No one's talked to me about this project since the Biodesign Challenge until this year. Now 3 people have talked to me about it, and I'm like so honored because I got ripped apart at the Biodesign Challenge.
Why?
Because like there are a lot of things that, as much as a thought experiment, I think this is a really interesting idea. And then in reality, when you dive more into it, there are a lot of nuances to, is this a real design intervention that could work and solve a problem in real life? And like,
I feel like it is.
Right? Thank you. I thought so too.
Yeah.
But like,
I mean,
they have
I was like, I feel sorry for the guys, but I mean,
right? And the reality is like, it was mostly an intervention for guys. Cause like, once it's inside a vaginal environment, like we've got like all sorts of different things going on that is simply not about like surface pH anymore. Like men have a much easier surface pH to measure than
unsurprisingly,
like, internal for women, you know? Because like there's an external sexual organ. Like internal for us is like a whole different pH system. And in terms of where sexually transmitted infection lesions, or if it doesn't manifest as some sort of lesion type thing, how do we measure that? So it's mostly an intervention for male or sexually male people. All of that together, they ripped it apart, which was a really humbling experience. Because like at the same time, it was my first ever attempt at any type of this type of work. So I was like, I'm just happy I made it here.
Yeah. How dare they discourage though?
It didn't. That's the good thing. It did not discourage me.
Yeah. I mean, I was just thinking while you were saying that about how females have that whole different pH going on. Like, could you have different colors for different things from females, and then guys could have different, and then you could just end up with a rainbow, potentially.
Right? And like, how can it be red? Like, what types of tools are there? You know, like, what does it really indicate?
Yeah, exactly. But it's so fascinating. The cabbage piece is fascinating because, as you said, there's so much food waste, especially like just at the larger scale at supermarkets. And I just wonder, like, you must be aware of so many different pigments that we can pick up from foods in, you know, your local grocery store.
Yes, and I think now that I've been zooming into fungi, I know less and less about the plant world and what is like the most. I've been learning a lot from my friends and surrounding experts, because now in the space where I'm in, like there's a lot of incredible rich history of plant dyeing and plant dyers who like have this incredible knowledge, and like I'm just happy to listen, because like I don't know anything about what they're doing. And to be fair, then I'll say something about fungal pigments and they're like, I don't know what you're doing, honey. So it's a great knowledge share and a great knowledge exchange. But like the world of plant pigments is incredibly historic and beautiful, yet also traditionally plant-based colorants do have a lot more limitations in terms of commercial output than what I'm able to generate with the fungal pigments, which is cool.
That's super cool, because I think there's so much opportunity in the fungal space. Is that correct? Because I feel like if we've only touched the surface, and we really have, if we've only kind of discovered that 5%, there must be just years and years worth of work that you could do and discovery that you could do.
100% right? Like that, the opportunity, it seems so boundless. Like we're even discovering more and more about the plant kingdom, which we've been studying for hundreds of years. Like how crazy that we're still finding new things in it, right? Like, and at the same time, we've got so much to do, so much work yet to be done in terms of fungi, that like, surely there's going to be crazy things that we're going to find that are going to be absolutely game-changing, revolutionary materials, innovations, potentially medicine. Like these organisms are so unbelievably cool. And we know thing.
No, I feel like I need to go back and do another couple of years just on mycelium alone.
Dude,
like
totally.
It's one of those things, like I nearly bought a ton of equipment and set it up in my garage because I was like, I need to know more about like the signal processing that they do is crazy. Like it is insane. So, I mean, yeah, even on that level.
It is essentially a neural network.
Yeah, it is. It is. Like just getting into the literature on that, it took like a few weeks out of my life, and I was like, I need to stop this. It was during my PhD. I was like, I need to stop and just focus. But yeah, it's just something that keeps on coming up, and I keep, going back to it. But do you think that we actually can sustainably use fungi in the long term? Like, is that going to be possible?
Absolutely.
Like, it's so interesting. I feel like we could just talk for hours. I'm learning so much.
Oh, we absolutely could. We absolutely could. Okay, so in terms of sustainably using fungi for materials in the long term, I absolutely see this as not only a possibility, but just as an inherent quality of working with these materials. So the way that I'm positioning my research and how I want to have this business grow is that an organism sample is taken from nature once and cultured in the lab forever. That way the ecosystem can stay healthy and intact, and that the natural environment does not receive any negative impact from my work. And at the same time, to make sure that the lab that I'm growing this in is in its most sustainable form. So whether that is the energy that is supplied or the water that is supplied or the waste output, however a factory or a facility can be best built, that's where I want to be. Is that my skill set? No, but there are people whose skill set it is, and I want to work with them on that. Love it. So working with these organisms, in the category of fungi, this does include yeast, a very famous yeast product that we as humans generally know and love is beer and wine, right? I think that's a very good visual because people often have a very strong visual of what beer production looks like. And that is these massive fermentation vats where you see like the hops and the grain going into it. And then it's like, ooh, the top goes on and then it's like fermenting and then you get beer out of it. So if you think about it in that sense, beer is a fungal product. And the production of my pigments can be and is designed to be as scalable and sustainable as brewing beer with different inputs and different outputs, but ultimately in that visualization of a fermentation vat, working with raw material inputs, getting incredible outputs, and how that can be cycled through. That's what we're working with here. So these bioreactors, a beer fermentation vat is essentially a bioreactor. And I think getting that image to people really helps them conceptualize what is really happening in the lab part of this. So if you consider the beer brewing process, besides the fact that it is using wheat or dependent on wheat when it is, which is a grown material, it can and should be as sustainable and scalable as brewing beer, which I think would be great.
I love that. I'm actually picturing like if you had these massive glass vats and then they were all different colors. Oh my God, that would look so cool.
That's how it's going to be.
Yeah, that is so amazing. Where are you going to set up? Are you back in London? Okay.
Yes. So I think for the moment I'm in London and I'll be here for a few more years. Ultimately, I will run out of visas and I will need to move back to the US. And I'm looking forward to that because I do think there is a lot of opportunity in the US to really make an impact in this space. So unclear when the facility production will really ramp up, whether that will happen before I leave London or after I move back to the US. So be it. I'm happy with whatever. But like at the same time, I really want to be working as much as I can towards developing this while I'm here. There's a really rich network of material innovation and especially like fungal materials and biomaterials and biofabricated materials, all of the above. Huge, incredible network in London. And really, and in the UK, in the EU, really, as long as I'm on this side of the ocean, really excited to be tapping into that network here and partnering with as many people as I can so that when I do have to move back across, I can maintain those relationships.
Yeah.
And that this can be much more of a connected experience than if I were to be starting from the US entirely.
Yeah, that is so cool. I feel like I'm going to have to come visit.
Oh my God, absolutely. You're welcome anytime. At this moment, I only have small vials of pigments to show you. But I hope by the time you come, I have like an actual bioreactor of like, it's growing.
No, I'd be totally happy to see the small pigments because like it's so cool. And honestly, no one's doing anything like that here in Australia. So, I mean, you're also welcome to come here. Just throwing it out there. I know we have to wrap up, but one thing I always want to know, especially in this sort of multidisciplinary space that you're in, is what advice would you give to someone starting out? You mentioned that, coming up with new concepts, sometimes people don't, receive them the way you think that they would. What can you share for people wanting to get into this space of art and technology and biomaterials and all that jazz?
Okay, so a few things. First one being, if you're interested in this space, welcome. Please come on in. Like, we need all hands on deck. This is a very new discipline in itself, an interdisciplinary discipline, if you will. Like, this is a whole new space, and we need as many people who are passionate about it as possible. So whether you're coming from a science background, a creative background, a legal background. A brilliant friend of mine who also did material futures comes from a legal background, and she pivoted towards design and is now doing wonderful things. And like any direction you are passionate about, there is space for that intersection of your passion with something else to create sustainable innovation and help the planet move forward and sustainably. Like we need you. So if you're in, we want you. And if you feel like you want to be in and you can't find your niche, you can't find your way in, be bold. Be like, I don't know the right word. I think it's not a word, it's not a term, but be a little bit American about it, okay?
Okay.
So what I mean by that is like, I feel like being now in a situation where I'm mostly UK, European context, I'm realizing the value of what I was taught in the methods I was taught growing up in the US to stand up and present your ideas, public speaking fearlessness, get up there, talk about what you're doing, and like hold up your own. You know, something about that is quite American, and that doesn't really happen so much. Definitely not in the UK. Like they're all very shy about public speaking and very much shy about talking about their own ideas and their own viewpoints. So like, screw that. If you feel passionately about these things, be bold and like be a little American about it. Like put yourself into those networking situations that like, if you know you want to be in that room and someone's somehow telling you that there's a barrier to your entry, question it. Like a lot of times there's like a price barrier for conferences because like some of these conferences are for professionals and for different industries, da 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 da. As an individual who's passionate about this space, usually you can find someone to talk to get some sort of discounted rate, if not free ticket. If not, they want you there because they're interested in what you've got to say and what you're interested in doing. And maybe suddenly you're on a panel. You never know. Like, if you want to be there, ask to be there. You don't ask, you don't get. Like, that is so much of what I do is just asking and putting myself into the right situations that I feel like, not that I know that they're the right situations, but I feel like that's the room I want to be in. So I find a way to be in that room. So insert yourself into these places that you want to be because you belong. And don't let people tell you that you don't belong because they don't know anything. They have no idea what you can do and how incredible the impact you can have on the space can be. So don't let them, even if they tear apart your color changing condoms, don't let that deter you, because there are still really fabulous ideas at the core of what you do. Even if someone tears it apart, say thank you, listen to what they say, learn from it, move forward, don't give up. Like, this is a weird space of learning and we need all hands on deck to do it. So like, don't give up, be where you want to be, and be a little bold about it, be a little American about it.
I love that. I love that. It's all about following your intuition,
That was a great
asking
way
the
to say it. Thank you.
questions. Yeah. And like, it's exactly what you say. If you feel there's a space that's where you want to be and you don't even know if it's right, like go and insert yourself.
Totally.
Insert yourself and extract the pigments.
Right? And like, if that's your passion, get in there.
Yeah.
Why would you let someone hold you back from your passion?
Yeah, I agree 100%. Well, thank you so much for your time, Jesse. I feel like we could talk for hours. Are you?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This has been really, really fun. It's so great to speak with you and to meet you in real virtual life. And so thank you so much for having me.
If you like this show, you can support it by liking and subscribing on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. We would also love if you share it with a family member, a friend, or anyone with an interest in science. As always, thank you for listening, and we hope to see you next time.